Hi, I'm your instructor, Rabbi Mordechai Weiss, and first of all, I'd like to welcome you to my classroom. This is one of the most beautiful and fascinating classrooms, at least in my opinion, in the world. I want to welcome all of you, my Shiloh University students, to our third class in historical geography of Israel. Today we are going to be discussing the Egyptian influence in this land during the Cananite period. And I purposely chose this location where I'm standing right now in the background to the east of where I am standing. You can see in the background behind me is the modern-day Hashemite kingdom of Jordan, otherwise known as the Moabite Mountains. Down below is the Syrian-African Rift, the Jordan Valley, the Dead Sea, many places which you should be familiar with. But in particular, what I wanted to point out today in connection to our discussion of the Egyptian influence in this area, specifically during the Cananite period, is a very important land route, which we still have remains of even till today at the very, very top of those mountains behind me. An ancient route, which is even mentioned in the Bible, known in Hebrew as Derech HaMelech, or in English, the King's Highway. And by its very name, you could assume that it must be kind of important if we're naming it in connection to the king. And in fact, it was a very, very important route in ancient times. It is specifically mentioned in the Bible a couple of times, but maybe most importantly, the Israelites, just before they're about to enter this land, just before they're about to cross the Jordan River, after spending 40 years of wandering in the desert, escaping from Egypt, where this road originates. They are coming through this area, and the road back then is controlled by different nations, the Edomites, the nation of Edom, the Moabites, and Moses, who was leading the Israelites at that time, is trying to get permission to come through that area. And despite all the assurances that he gives the Edomites and the Moabites, they do not, in fact, give him permission, so he sort of has to bypass the area. Be that as it may, it is the route that the Israelites themselves will be traveling upon just before they enter into the land of Israel, led by Joshua. Behind me, on the top of that route, it is a route, again, beginning in Egypt, but going through some very important places, to places that we're familiar with today, the Sinai Desert, Eilat, Aqaba, Petra, again, heading all the way northward, which would be in that direction, towards ancient Mesopotamia, which, of course, that today would be through modern-day Syria, touching into modern-day Turkey. It's interesting, you know, even just today when I got up in the morning and I was checking out the headline news, right there at the top of the list was a trade issue that the world is dealing with today. Two great powers, the United States of America and China, fighting over trade. You know, history, of course, tends to repeat itself. And sure enough, when we speak about this all-important route, the King's Highway, just behind me, again, it helps to understand all the many battles that are going to be taking place along this route, both in the Egyptian Cananite period and later on in history during the Greek and Roman period. Today, many Muslims continue to use that route when they travel southward from here on their way to Mecca. Putting it all together, we are in the Levant. We are in a very strategic part of the world, especially in terms of the ancient world, where you have in ancient times the ancient empire of Egypt, that direction, to the south, and again to the north, heading to Mesopotamia, another powerful force to be dealt with during that time. And so this area that connects those two is always in contention, and whoever controls it controls access back and forth, and again, most importantly, controls the route, controls the trade, and that seems to be always a very important factor in terms of the history that is occurring in this area. And so when we want to specifically focus on the Egyptian influence, and again, even more so, when we want to focus on the Egyptian influence specifically during the Cananite period, I believe that we have to focus on one individual specifically, and the person that I'm referring to is Thutmose III. Thutmose III, again, this is going back to the 15th century BCE, some 3,500 years ago. Thutmose was the sixth pharaoh of the 18th dynasty. He ruled for 54 years, and we know a lot about him. How do we know so much about him? Well, first of all, we have 19th century discoveries in Egypt of his burial tomb, and all of the writings and archaeological discoveries that were made in connection to him. So we really know a lot about this guy. And what we also know about him is that he was a great military genius. Not just a great military genius, he could have been one of the greatest of all. This was a guy that during his reign conquered some 350 cities. He had something like about 17 campaigns. And again, this is a guy who's going to transform Egypt into a major superpower, ruling all the way from Egypt to the Euphrates. One other key thing I want to mention about him is that one of the reasons that we know so much about him and so much about the battles, which we're going to speak about in another moment, is because this was a man who had the smarts to bring along with him a scribe. And this scribe, who Thutmose III brought along with him, transcribed records of all these famous battles, or many of these famous battles that he was involved with. And that's why some of the battles that he was involved with are some of the oldest recorded battles that we have in history. Which brings me to battle number one that I want to speak about. Again, speaking about the Egyptian influence here in this land during the Cananite period, you have to start with the mother of them all, the Battle of Megiddo. Now, for those of you that have traveled to Israel, you would know that one of the most interesting historical archaeological sites that you can visit in Israel is a place called Tel Megiddo. It's located to the north of here. Tel Megiddo is located on another very important route that goes through this area, the Via Maris, the Way of the Sea, which connects to the Derech HaMelech, the King's Highway. And because of its strategic importance, this location, Megiddo, was involved throughout its long history with many different battles. It's not a coincidence that we connect that specific location with Armageddon, Har Megiddo, Mount Megiddo. But again, that would be a discussion for another time. But anyway, be that as it may, it's going to be at Megiddo that we're told that the largest battle that Thutmose III is going to be involved with in all of his campaigns is going to take place at Megiddo, where he will successfully defeat the many Cananite rulers who have gathered together at Megiddo to face Thutmose, and in the end, Thutmose is going to be victorious. Again, we have some very interesting archaeological finds there connecting the site with Egypt, specifically some ivories, which again depict a very strong Egyptian influence in Megiddo. Another very interesting archaeological site, another interesting biblical site, is the city of Bet Sha'an, Tel Bet Sha'an, the ancient archaeological site of Sha'an. This is a place where later on in history, the Greeks, the Romans, are going to make it part of a group of 10 cities, Decapolis. It'll be known as Scythopolis back then, but in its origins, it's going to be known as Beit Sha'an, and that actually sits to the north of here, right basically where the King's Highway and the Via Maris meet up with each other, again explaining its strategic significance. Again, a place of many battles. Very famous biblical battle is going to take place there between Saul, the first king of Israel, and the Philistines. Saul's body will actually be hung on the walls of Beit Sha'an after his very unfortunate defeat there. But anyway, this will also be a place that Thutmose III is going to conquer. We have a very interesting stela that was discovered at Beit Sha'an, a battle, a fight taking place between a dog and a lion. If you want to see that, you'd have to come to Jerusalem and visit the Israel Museum. And the Egyptians set up an administrative center there in Beit Sha'an and were there for hundreds of years. One last place that I'd like to mention, and again, there are many places that I could speak about in order to show you the Egyptian influence here during the Cananite period, but one last place would be Jaffa. Now, Jaffa today, modern-day Jaffa, is part of the modern-day city of Tel Aviv. The modern-day city of Tel Aviv is only just over 100 years old. But part of that city, Tel Aviv Jaffa, is a very, very ancient site. Again, it is a biblical site. It is the location where Jonah departs before getting swallowed up by a very, very large fish. Jaffa will be another location that Thutmose III is going to conquer. This is a very, very busy guy. And there's actually a very interesting story connected to that battle. During that battle of Jaffa, the Egyptians are going to hide their soldiers in sacks, which are being brought to the Canaanites in Jaffa as a gesture of goodwill. And of course, the soldiers will remove themselves from the sacks and successfully conquer the city. This is a story very much like the Trojan horse story that's going to be told hundreds of years later by Homer. So as I said, there are many places here in Israel, many more places here in Israel to explore, and I really hope to see you here in Israel very soon.